Hey, First Baptist Church, this is Pastor Sean, just coming to you. This is our beginning of our second full week of doing church online. So if this is your first week with us, welcome. We are glad that you are watching this with us. We know that this is getting shared out and people are sending it to friends and family, and we're just glad that you can join us in worshiping today. If you missed last week, you can always go back on our website or on YouTube and check out Wednesday night. I did a Bible study of kind of 5 steps that we need to take when we're in a crisis out of Psalms. And then last week, looking about just kind of looking and reminding ourselves that God is with us no matter the storm or the crisis that we are in. If you remember out of Genesis chapter 15, that He is our shield. He is with us in the middle of a war. And so just kind of reminding of you those. I want to give you a couple announcements. One is that we still have ministry opportunities. There's still things that even though we're not at church on Wednesdays and Sundays and people are not filling our campuses through the week, we are still at church and ministry opportunities are still coming in. And so one of those is Webb City Cares. This past weekend, we just packed a bunch of bags and gave out 106 weekend bags to 106 kids and families. And I will tell you, I was the person that was directly handing them out to cars. OJ Moss helped me, and he was handing those out to the walkers who were walking up to the school to get those. And every kid and every parent was so appreciative of getting extra food, of getting kind of great food, kind of kid-friendly food that the kids were very excited about getting. We got Capri Suns and puddings and Rice Krispie treats and ding dongs and ho-hos and chips and cookies and macaroni and cheese and popcorn and Slim Jims and granola bars and cereal. I mean, they were amazing bags. First Baptist, you guys did awesome. We still have a lot left that was given, but we do not have enough to do next week. So as you're out shopping, we need you just to grab a thing or two and bring it to the church. There's going to be a bin. As soon as you open the door of our church, right there in the foyer is going to be a Webb City Cares bin. You can just throw it in there and we will collect it and sort it, and we will let you guys know about packing and what we're going to do. Webb City Webb City Schools are changing up how they're giving lunches next week. And so we're kind of waiting on the directive of what that's going to look like, and then we will let you guys know. The second thing I want to remind you guys about is that hopefully this week you've been contacted by a deacon or a staff member of the church. If you haven't, I'm sure you will be contacted in the next couple of days. But also starting next week, I'm going to go through the list personally, and I'm going to call every family in our church. I don't know if I can get all this done in a week, but I'm going to try my best. So if you see my phone number, please don't hit the hater button. Answer it. Let me talk to you. Let me pray for you. See what we can do. I'm just excited to hear from you and see what your needs are, if there is any, and what is God showing you during this time. So hopefully you will hear from us. If you don't hear from anybody this week, I encourage you to call or email or text me and say, hey, what's the deal? We might not have the right phone number. We might not have the right email. Or honestly, we might not just have all of your information. And so, but we're going to try to reach out to everybody that we have information for this week. And as we are reaching out to you, remember that you need to reach out to other people. This is a great week that you can sit down for a few minutes and contact coworkers, contact your neighbors, contact your friends at school, even college students and kids and regular students. Hey, you guys had friends before all of this went crazy. Call them. Just say, hey, you know what? Been thinking about you. Is there anything we can do? Remember, as Christians, we are marked for our love and care of other people. This is a time right now where people are caring about themselves. They're hoarding food and toilet paper and all of those needs. But as Christians, we're called to care about others. And so if you remember the Good Samaritan story, Jesus teaches us that everybody is our neighbor. And so make sure you check on your friends and your coworkers, your neighbors, and even your family. Call them, see how they're doing. Another thing I want to remind you about is giving, offering. Even though we're not meeting on campus, it's so important that you are still contributing in your tithes and your offerings. Bills are still coming in. Ministry opportunities still come in as we have members who are without work or reduced hours, and we want to be able to help the best way that we possibly can. I just want to remind you that you can, of course, you can mail it in. You can bring it by the church office on Monday through Thursday, 8 to 5. Or if that's after hours or on the weekend, you can put it in our mailbox and we will get that. Every day we're checking that. But the best and the easiest way is to do that online and on our website and on YouTube. You can go through a video and I walk you through the steps. You can give by your checking account. You can give by a debit card, a credit card. It's just super easy, super safe. We've been using it for over a year now and have had no problem. And so I just want to remind you of that. The last thing I want to say is I had some kids and some people come into my office and they challenged me with something. And so as I do videos every week, I have changed something in the background. So in my background, as I preach, there's something new every week. And so the first person who comments on a video that lets me know what that is, you will get a prize from yours truly. And so it can be a kid, it can be an adult, but I have changed something in the background from the last message that I've done. So that's going to encourage you, for one, to watch all the messages. Two, if you're ADD like me, most of the time you're not even looking at this face. I know it hurts, and you're looking in the background. You're saying, is that a big horn up there? Is that a Trump yarmulke? Yeah, I bought it in Israel. What is all this weird stuff? Is a book backwards? You never know what I'm going to do. But if you comment, you'll be the first to get a prize from me, and I will mail that to you so you don't have to come by the church. Guys, I am looking forward to worship today. Trenton got a couple more of his band guys together this week, and they did a fantastic job. And right now, let's get ready to worship. God bless.
Hello, church. Welcome back to our online services. This is our second week back being online. Today is a little different. We have two people playing with us, our little band. We got Isaac and Alex playing behind me. We're going to play two songs today, There's Nothing That Our God Can't Do and How Marvelous. Let's go to the Lord in prayer before we worship. Dear Lord, I thank you so much for this day. I thank you for everything you've given us, Lord. I just thank you so much that we were able to come together and still worship you online, Lord. And I just pray that it reaches people and just in the comfort of their home, that they can feel your presence, Lord. I pray that you are just with the coronavirus, Lord, that you can get rid of it, Lord, and just be with us always, Lord. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. In just one word, you calm the storm that surrounds me. In just one word, the darkness has to retreat. In just one touch, I feel the presence of heaven. In just one touch, my eyes were open to see. My heart can't help but believe. There's nothing that our God can't do. There's not a mountain that He can't move. Oh, praise the name that makes a way. There's nothing that our God can't do. In just one word, you heal what's broken inside. In just one word, you revive every dream. In just one touch, I feel the power of heaven. In just one touch, my eyes are open to see. My heart can't help but believe. There's nothing that our God can't do. There's not a mountain that He can't move. Oh, praise the name that makes a way. There's nothing that our God can't do. I will believe for greater things. There's no power like the power of Jesus. Let faith arise, let all agree. There's no power like the power of Jesus. I will believe for greater things. There's no power like the power of Jesus. Let faith arise, let all agree. There's no power like His power. There's nothing that our God can't do. There's not a mountain that He can't move. Oh, praise the name that makes a way. There's nothing that our God can't do. We're going to sing How Marvelous now. Singing how marvelous, how wonderful, and my song shall ever be. How marvelous, how wonderful is my Savior's love for me. I stand amazed in the presence of Jesus the Nazarene, and wonder how He could love me, a sinner condemned unclean. We're singing how marvelous, how wonderful, and my song shall ever be. How marvelous, how wonderful is my Savior's love for me. He took my sins and my sorrows. He made them His very own. He bore the burden to Calvary and suffered and died alone. We're singing how marvelous, how wonderful, and my song shall ever be. How marvelous, how wonderful is my Savior's love for me. And when the ransomed in glory His face I at last shall see, it will be my joy through the ages to sing of His love for me. Singing how marvelous, how wonderful, and my song shall ever be. How marvelous, how wonderful is my Savior's love for me.
Hey, great job, Trenton, Isaac, and Alex. Thank you guys for coming up this week and doing that for us. It was great to hear from so many of you that you actually sing
at your house when you're watching this. I think that's great. I think we need to do that, even if it feels weird. There's just something about us is singing out to God and just worshiping Him, no matter if we're together, no matter if we're surrounded by a bunch of people, or whether we're in a car or just maybe with our family in our house. So keep that up. Once again, great job, Trenton. You guys did excellent, as you always do. In this kind of crisis of being stuck in our house and going through all of this, many of us want to get out. Our boys even ask if we could go to the zoo, and I really thought, I was like, well, yeah, maybe the zoo is open. It's outside. It's not like a lot of people get together. Like nobody's gonna like lick a rhino or share diseases with. I was just like, yeah, well. If you guys didn't know, all the zoos are closed. I don't know why. It doesn't make sense to me. But we spend a lot of times at zoos. We love zoos. We love learning about animals. Our kids have always done it. We've do it as a family. But what's interesting, thinking about a zoo, for those of you who don't like them, you're about to get a little National Geographic education. If you've ever been to a zoo, almost every zoo has this animal called the impala. The impala is kind of like a small deer. You kind of like antelope-ish type of animal. And so what's interesting about an impala is that when you go to the zoo and see them, there's not two fences that keep you separated. Almost always there's just one fence. In a lot of other animals, there's two, right? There's one fence that the animals can come up to. Then there's a space. And then there's a fence so humans can't cross over. So there's a space. Well, a lot of times impalas will only have one fence. And what's interesting is the next time you go, look at it, that one fence around the impala will be different than any other fence around. A lot of times, most of the times, fences around all the other animals are see-through. So like a kid maybe in a stroller can look through the fence and can see that. But on an impala, even though there's one fence and not normally two, but there's only one, it will be not see-through. It'll be covered. Maybe it has lots of sticks or something to make it look more African. I mean, whatever. You just can't see through it. It's not just like a metal kind of two-rail or like a horse gate two-rail type of fence. You'll see that you can't see through it. And the reason is because impalas are an interesting animal. An impala is kept in at a zoo by a 3-foot fence. Now, what's interesting is an impala can jump 10 feet high and over almost 30 feet in distance. And so if you know that, you kind of think to yourself, well, why wouldn't the impala just jump out? I mean, easily. If you can jump 10 feet to jump over 3 and to run, it's pretty easy, right? Well, there's a problem with impalas. Impalas will only jump to where they can see that their feet will land. And so that's just an interesting thing about them. So when zookeepers take a fence, maybe like a 2-rung fence, right? And then they put sticks and things in front of it. Well, the impala cannot look through the fence and see exactly the place in which its feet's going to land. So even though the impala can jump up 10 feet and jump 30 feet in distance, it will not just jump over a 3-foot fence because it cannot see where it will land. Sometimes in crisis and sometimes in our life, we start to become impalas. And what I mean by that is impalas, if you think about it, they live by sight and not by faith. They have the ability to jump higher and jump farther and jump over and to run, but they don't have enough faith to just take a little jump over a 3-foot fence so that they would be free. And so today, I want to talk about our faith in crises. With everything that's going on, school has now been moved back. People are trying to figure out what they're going to do with their kids and jobs and food. And some of you are still, literally, I talked to somebody today that is still looking for toilet paper. That to me is literally one of the most funniest things in the world. Even though I got like 60 rolls at my house. but people still can't find it. It's so funny to me. But you kind of have this idea that people need to live by faith, not just by sight. And so today I want to talk about a very, very known story, Probably almost everybody watching this has heard some point of this biblical story. But it starts with a king named Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar's dad was taking over the world. He has literally defeated all of the world except for a small region called Israel. At that time, it was just a couple hundred miles wide, a couple hundred miles deep. It was not that big. Nebuchadnezzar's dad just died defeating Egypt at the Battle of Gilgamesh. And so now King Nebuchadnezzar, his son, takes over. And so the only place in the world left to take over, the known world, is Israel. And so as soon as King Nebuchadnezzar gets the new crown, his dad's crown on his head, he says, let's go. We're going to take over. But here's something interesting. King Nebuchadnezzar was a brilliant, brilliant man. He was a super smart warrior, but also he understood what the long-term goals of a civilization would be. Before Babylon came over and kind of took over the known world, there was another superpower, and they were called the Assyrians. And what happened when the Assyrians from the north came down and started conquering the known world and working their way south, when they came to a town, a city, a kingdom, and they would take over, they would not take slaves. They would literally skin people alive and watch them die. That's what they did. It's what they're known for. They actually perfected the art of skinning people alive. Well, King Nebuchadnezzar was a much more smart man and could see the long go of what it would take to keep a civilization going. And so when King Nebuchadnezzar became king and he was coming down to conquer Israel, he wasn't going to be like the Assyrians. He wasn't going to skin people alive. He knew that he needed all the people he could because he knew one day he would not be the superpower. There would be a bigger king with a bigger army. And so he knew he needed to build his kingdom up. And so how did he do this? So as he comes down and takes Israel, he doesn't come and just wipe them out in one fell swoop. When they easily could have. They had so much more people, such a bigger army. They could have. But what he did was he came down and he took back a small group of people. Now, the people that he took back were a group of kind of teenage boys, kind of 14, 15, 16-year-old boys. They had to be smart. They had to be good looking. They had to be very athletic. They just had to be like one of the most well-rounded people kind of Israel. And what he did is he would take them back and he would educate them and basically brainwash them to say that they loved Babylon. So he would take them from Israel, kind of erase all of Israel from their mind, show them why Babylon was better, so that at a later time when Nebuchadnezzar came and got more people from Israel and came back to Babylon, these once Jewish men, boys that are now men, now leaders, are going to help Nebuchadnezzar brainwash these Jewish men that say, no, Babylon's better. So that one day when a superpower came down, it wasn't a bunch of countries living under a Babylonian king. It was literally one big, humongous Babylonian culture that wanted to help and to protect Babylon. It was brilliant. It was kind of one of the first in its making. And so that's what he did. And so we start the story in the book of Daniel, Daniel chapter 1. And we're not going to kind of turn there in chapter 1, but kind of help you understand. So he comes and he gets some of these boys and he takes them back. And the first thing that he does, King Nebuchadnezzar, he gives them a new name. If you would think, if you're going to take somebody from your house, from your city, from your town, from your country, and you take them and they have nothing else of them, the only thing that they truly have is who they are. And so King Nebuchadnezzar says, well, I'm going to fix that. I'm going to erase all of their past, so he takes away their Jewish name and gives them Babylonian names. And so we're kind of introduced to four people, and that's a guy named Daniel, that's the prophet, and King Nebuchadnezzar calls him Belshazzar. That's his Babylonian name. And then there's three other guys, and the rest of the book of Daniel uses their Babylonian names. And those Babylonian names are Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, right? So Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. It's funny names. It's just Babylonian names. They all have meanings. Not a big deal at this point, in this point of the story. And so he gives them these names. And so he says, here's the deal. I'm going to give you new names, but here's what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to put you up in the best apartments that the city has. I'm going to send you to the best college that the city has. I'm going to send you the best university. I'm going to give you anything you want, the new clothes. I'm going to give you the best life you can afford. And here's what I'm going to do. While you're going to school for 3 years, while you're doing this, after these 3 years, you are now going to work for me. You're going to be one of my many advisors right here in the palace. So for these young Jewish men, they're thinking, man, this is fantastic. I get to live at the palace. I get to go to the king's school. I get all of this good stuff, new clothes, and then I have a guaranteed job with the king. This is much better than herding goats. This is much better than building bricks. This is much better than the life they would have lived in Israel. And so you can see kind of this brain worshiping, how Nebuchadnezzar did this. And one of the things that Nebuchadnezzar also did, besides the nice apartment and the food and the school, he said, and you will even eat from my table. You will get all the food that the king gets, all the wine that I get. You can have as much as you want. Just imagine the best of the best Golden Corral. Like if like Gordon Ramsay had a buffet. This is it. I mean, this is amazing food, all you can eat. And so there was a problem. So these young men, everything sounded good when it came up to food. And it came up to food, and Daniel and Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego said, King, we appreciate this, but we can't do that. Our God, in whom we serve, says that we can't eat this food. It's not kosher. God gave us some laws of food that we need to be. And also, King, all of your food is sacrificed to other gods, and we only believe in one God. That's the God of Abraham. That's the God Yahweh. And so King Nebuchadnezzar says, guys, you don't understand. My food is going to be superior than to whatever you can find in Babylon that would fit to your Jewish customs. And these 4 boys said, King, we understand, but we trust in God will provide for us. And so King Nebuchadnezzar says, you know what? That's okay. I don't trust your God, but if you do, we're going to do a little test. And so if you turn puny, if you get sick, if you're unhealthy, you're going to start eating off of my table while you're at school and you're working for me. And so he allowed this, and God kept them and sustained them. And actually, at the end of this, God says that they were 10 times better than any other man from any other kingdom of any other advisor. So this is pretty amazing. So they had faith in God just over food, and God kind of worked this out. So in chapter 2, we skip 2 years, and now we're at the end of the second year of their college, of their university. And so God had started sending some dreams to King Nebuchadnezzar, and it's been keeping him up. It's been giving him insomnia. So it's literally driving him crazy. And so King Nebuchadnezzar calls in for all of his men and says, here's what I want from you. You have to do 2 things for me. 1, you have to tell me, what am I dreaming? 2, you have to tell me, what does it mean? Well, all of his advisors said, King, we have no idea what you're dreaming. And even if we did, I don't even know if we would know the interpretation. And so this made King Nebuchadnezzar mad. And so King Nebuchadnezzar says, round up every person I have that works in this palace. I'm going to kill them all and start over. And so that night they go and they wake up Daniel, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, and they say, hey, we have to kill you. And they're like, whoa, why are you killing us? And they said, well, because the king is having some dreams and nobody can interpret them. And Daniel, Meshach, Shadrach, Abednego, they say, well, we can do this. Our God can do anything. And so they take these 4 men to the King Nebuchadnezzar, and King Nebuchadnezzar says, you say that you can do this? And they said, well, we can't, but our God can. Our God can do anything. Give us 1 night. We'll come back. We'll come back in 24 hours and tell you what you want. And the king said, well, okay, if you can do this, you will live. If you can't, of course, you're going to be killed. And so it says that to these 4 boys, they go back and they pray to God and they pray for one another. And God sends this vision. And so they go back and they tell the king, here's what your dream is and here's what it means. And the king says, you're absolutely right. That makes sense. And so they save themselves, but they also save every other advisor that the king has. Once again, they had faith in God, would kind of give them the vision, help them out, and save their lives. Well, we come to chapter 3. Chapter 3 skips ahead about another 10 to 12 years. And at this time, Nebuchadnezzar goes back and he takes another 10,000 people from Jerusalem and brings them to Babylon, once again to start this kind of brain worshiping kind of culture that he is doing. And so during this time, as he brings these 10,000 back, the king is feeling great. He's feeling victorious. He's feeling like his kingdom is growing and all things are going as good. So this king erects this huge statue. The Bible says in chapter 3 that it is 90 foot tall and 9 foot wide of solid gold. This is the biggest statue it's ever been built to this time. You can imagine an 8-story building is literally what he built, this huge statue. And so King Nebuchadnezzar says, here's the deal, that when all of my musicians play, everybody will stop what they're doing, they will bow down, and they will worship this. And so this happens. So on this day, the whole Babylon gets together, all the music fires up, and everybody bows down. Everybody in the known world bows down towards the statue, except for these men, right? These men, this Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. And so all of the advisors come to the king and say, your 3 Jewish advisors, they didn't bow down. You need to kill them. You said that you would do that. And this is where we're going to pick up in our story. And so in Daniel chapter 3, verse 13, it says, Then Nebuchadnezzar is furious in rage, commanded that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought. And so they sought these men before the king. And Nebuchadnezzar answered and said to them, Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the golden image that I have set up? He almost gives them a second chance, right? These men come to him and he says, hey, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, did you have your ear pods in? Did you have your headphones on? Was you vacuuming and the dogs are barking? Was your husband listening to some music or maybe working in the garage? Maybe you didn't hear. Like, what was going on? What's happening? How come you didn't bow down? Surely you just didn't hear. I'm going to give you a second chance. You guys have been great to me. You guys have been great advisors to me. I'm going to give you a second chance. And so in verse 15, he says, Now, if you're ready, when you hear the sound of the horn, the pipe, the lyre, the trigon, the harp, the bagpipe, and every kind of music, you need to fall down and worship the image that I have made. Well and good. But if you do not worship, you shall immediately be cast into a burning fiery furnace. And no God, and who is the God who will deliver you out of my hand? So he's going to give them a second chance. And he says, okay, I'm going to get my musicians together and they're going to play again. And then you can bow down and worship. But if you don't, you're going to be thrown into this fiery furnace. Now, depending on, Vacation Bible School, Sunday school, thoughts that we have in our head, what do you think of when you think of a fiery furnace? Honestly, I know what it is, but even in my mind, I think of like this huge, like cast iron potbelly stove, kind of like Hansel Gretel style, like they're just like shoving them into like this big kind of fiery furnace. But what's interesting is that in North Iraq, which is pretty close to Israel, they have excavated some huge furnaces. These furnaces are as big as a city block. And they can be up to 35 foot tall, but they're only like 8 or 9 foot wide. And basically, if you think about it, it's this huge tunnel, almost this huge tunnel that's kind of with this big walls. And it was made that they would make these bricks out of mud, and they would park all these bricks in this huge long channel. And then they would start a fire at one end, and then because it was a tunnel, the breeze of the desert would come through and blow and spread that fire and heat down, cooking these bricks so that they could build cities and towns and statues and pyramids and all types of things that they were building. So when we think about a furnace, don't think of something small. This is literally the size of our church, okay? I mean, this thing is a mammoth. This is a city block. And so just kind of get that picture. And so King Nebuchadnezzar says, I'm going to give you a second chance. But if you don't, I'm going to throw you in that furnace. And just imagine, what type of fire would it take to heat up a furnace the size of a city block, 35 foot tall? These are some amazing furnaces with some amazing Texas A&M kind of bonfire style kind of fires. I mean, this is humongous. So nobody wants to be thrown in this fire, right? And he says at the end, well, it's going to be so big that no God can rescue you. And who is the God who will deliver you out of my hands? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to even answer you in this matter. Now, I'm just going to say that would have made me mad, so I know it would have made a king mad, right? There's no need to even give you an answer. Verse 17, if this be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. Verse 18, this is amazing. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up before us. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego said, we're not going to bow down. You don't have to play the instruments a second time. We heard it the first. We believe in only one true God. This is the reason we couldn't eat of your food. This is the reason that we could interpret your dreams. This is who we are. We are Israelites. We are Jews. We are from the nation of the one God, the God of all gods, Yahweh. And what's amazing is Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they trusted God completely. They had an amazing faith, not only in the little things of the food and of the dreams, but now in their life. But notice they had trust in God really in two things, right? One was that God would save them and deliver them from this fire. For one, that's a pretty big faith, right? But notice they said, even if he doesn't rescue us from this fire, even if he doesn't deliver us from the situation, I trust that he will deliver us to heaven. He will come and rescue us and take us to where he has promised us to go because we are his followers. So they had enough faith to believe not only in them rescuing him to help them get out of that situation at that moment, but they had a bigger faith that said that even if he doesn't rescue us and he lets us burn alive in this furnace, I believe that he will come and get us and take us to heaven, the place in which he has created for us. It goes on in verse 19. The Nebuchadnezzar was filled with fury. You could imagine his expression of his face was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And he ordered the furnace heated 7 times more than it was usually heated. Once again, think about a fire that would heat a city block 35 foot tall in a 9-foot kind of tunnel corridor. That would have been a massive fire. But now ramp it up 7 times hotter, 7 times bigger. This is just an amazing amount of fire. And he ordered that some of the mighty men of his army was to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He just didn't say, hey, tie them up. He ordered the strongest, biggest, Hulk Hoganist Navy SEAL guy to come out, just kind of like, ugh. And he said, wrap them up. I mean, I do not want them to get out in any such way. And then he cast them into the burning fiery furnace. And these men were bound in their cloaks with their tunics, their hats, and other garments, and they were thrown into the burning fiery furnace. Notice that it says that they were wearing their cloaks, their tunics, their hats. This was immediately. This wasn't time past. Nebuchadnezzar didn't give them time and say, well, maybe you guys might change your mind. Immediately, as they were standing there, they were instantly bound and they were thrown in. Because of the king's order, verse 22, was so urgent and the furnace was so overheated, the flame of the fire killed those men who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So imagine this tunnel. If the tunnel looked like this, my face is the fire, right? And so imagine there would have been like a sand dune on this side that would kind of come up. on both sides. So men could walk up and throw them down into this kind of big kiln, this big furnace. And so it says that they go up and they push them off, but it was so hot that it killed the men who walked them up and pushed them off. This fire was so raging that it even killed his own soldiers at the top of this. And let's see. Verse 23, and these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell bound into the burning fiery furnace. So they fell down into this furnace. Verse 24, then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished and rose in haste. He declared to his counselors, did we not cast three men bound into the fire? And they answered and said, true, O king, we only threw three people in. And then he said, but I see four men, and they're unbound. They're walking around in the fire, and they are not hurt. And the appearance of the fourth one is like a son of the gods. And so King Nebuchadnezzar is at the end of this furnace looking in, and he says, Didn't we just throw three guys in there, guys? And so all of his advisors, oh, wise king, yes, we only threw three in. And Nebuchadnezzar says, well, why is there four? I see four. And of these four men, all of them are walking around the fire. They're not on fire. They're not screaming. They're no longer burnt. And one of them is a son of the gods. Now, what that means is basically he is something that is more powerful, more bigger than anything that they know. It would have been a glowing kind of like majestic glory, something that even king of the whole world knew at that moment it was not of that earth, and it was something far superior than anything he's ever seen before. And so he says here, well, there's four. They're walking around. And Nebuchadnezzar came near to the door of the burning fiery furnace, and he declared, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the fire. Now notice how it says that King Nebuchadnezzar came close to the door, right? So at the end of this tunnel, there would have been a door to kind of keep the fire and the heat in. But notice it says he came near. Now, what happened to the soldiers at the top of this, right? As they came near to push them in to fall into the furnace, they died. So when the king came near to the door, this shows that time has elapsed. It's not that they fell in and they were instantly unbound and, oh my gosh, getting out, because people could say, well, maybe the heat hadn't got to them yet. This fire that is built for this, 7 times hotter, 7 times bigger, had to burn long enough to cool down to be a normal heat that the king could order the door be open so these men could walk out and them not being burnt up. Just saying that the king came near to the door shows that this 7 times hotter fire has now cooled down. These men have been in the fire for a long time. Okay? A long time. 2 days ago, we had a bonfire at my house. Last night, I go up and I stir up and I just go to put some extra twigs and stuff we found in the house, and it was still really hot. So I literally just kind of stirred up the ashes with the rake and started blowing and put a couple leaves on it, and whoom, the fire started. Heat takes a long time in a fire to cool down. So they were in there a good bit of time. And so Nebuchadnezzar calls for them and tells them to come out. And he even says, servants of the Most High God. Now, Nebuchadnezzar's not saying that the man that was in the fire, the Son of God, is God. He's not saying that Yahweh is God Almighty. He's saying that he is one God of many. Babylonians had many, many, many gods. And so he's just saying that, hey, come out. You are of one of the powerful gods of Babylon. In verse 27, it says that, and the satraps, the prefects, the governors, and the king's counselors gathered together and saw that the fire had not had any power over the bodies of those men. The hair on their heads was not singed, the cloaks were not harmed, and no smell of the fire had come beyond them. So he gathers everybody together, and everybody notices that nothing is burned. Not their clothes, not even their hair. They don't even smell like smoke, but the ropes on their arms and on their legs, they're burned. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I've had some instances where I've singed maybe my eyebrows, my beard, even my arm hair with some lighter fluid grilling or starting a bonfire. It doesn't really take a lot to singe the hair on your face and on your arms and on your head. It's very easy. And so here the Bible says nothing happened. The only thing that burned was the restraints. In verse 28, Nebuchadnezzar answered and said, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants who trusted in him and set aside the king's command and yielded up their bodies rather than serve and worship any god except for their God." And so here's what happened. Notice that he says, "Blessed be the God." Now, once again, he's not saying that Yahweh is the God above all gods. It's not what he's saying. He's just saying that the God of these three men is a powerful God. But notice that he says, "Who has sent his angel and delivered his servants." Literally 3 minutes later, 3 minutes earlier, he said that the fourth person in the fire was a son of God. He's making a decorative statement saying that, man, that fourth person, they're powerful. It was like a God was in there, right? And now 3 minutes after that, Nebuchadnezzar says, well, their God helped save them. And that angel, that messenger, that servant of a God. And so he's already kind of like downplaying. He's already kind of saying, well, Nebuchadnezzar is doing what every man does, right? You get a bunch of guys together, and it doesn't matter what we're doing, right? And so whether you're shooting guns, you're shooting bows and arrows, if you're playing pig at your kids' basketball, right? You could get a couple people together, and we're just like, somebody's going to do like under the leg, over the back, eyes closed with their mouth open, drinking a Gatorade from half court, and they make the shot. And every guy's going to be like, oh my goodness, that was amazing. And then like 5 minutes later, all those guys are going to be like, that was all right. That was pretty cool, but it could happen. But then like the next day, that person who made the shot, they're going to be like, man, you remember that shot I made yesterday? And all the other guys were there. You know what they're going to be? They're going to be like, you know what? It wasn't that big of a deal. Literally, I could have done it. I just wanted you to feel good, right? We always downgrade things that we see. This is amazing. Oh, that was pretty cool. I could have done that. It was just, I wanted you to feel good. That's exactly what Nebuchadnezzar's doing. He saw something that God did. That was amazing. Oh, that's okay. That's kind of cool. And we're going to see that kind of play out. And so he says that he sent an angel. He did this. Verse 29, therefore I make a decree. Therefore Nebuchadnezzar is making a promise. He says, any nation, any people, nation, or language that speaks against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be torn limb to limb and their houses laid in ruins. For there is no other God who is able to rescue in this way. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. Once again, King Nebuchadnezzar is not saying that Yahweh, that their God is better than it. He's allowing it. He's saying, everybody bow down at the statue, but if you want to worship this God, I'll allow it, right? It's not that big of a deal. It's okay. I won't kill you if that's what you do. I still want you to worship here, but if you want to worship here, okay, I'll let that pass. And so when we think about this story, right, and so that's kind of how that story ends. And really, we never hear about those guys anymore in the book of Daniel. And so when we think about this, the question is, are you living by faith or by sight? Are you being an impala that can have freedom, that can get out and do things, but because you can't see it, you can't believe it? And there's three things I want you to take away from this. One is that real faith is countercultural. In this crisis, in the world in which we're living right now, real faith in God is countercultural. Think about verse 14. When Nebuchadnezzar was told that they wouldn't bow down, and Nebuchadnezzar asked Meshach, Rashach, and Abednego, he says, is this true? Is it true that you're not doing what I'd say? Is it true that you're not willing to do what everyone else in the world is doing? What is everybody else in the world doing right now? Whether you talk to your neighbor on Facebook, or even people that have come into church this week and talked to me, there's a sense of fear in everybody. Some people, it's very little. Some people, it's a lot. Some people, it's just the fear of uncertainty, of money, of stock markets, of jobs, of all these things that happen. Is your faith countercultural? The world right now is fearful. And I can completely understand people being fearful about sickness and about virus and about money and jobs. That is okay. It's okay to be scared. But when it comes down to it, is that the end? Do you stop at being fearful? Or do you have real faith that goes against the culture? You know what? I can be concerned. I can be fearful for these things. But my faith is in something that is greater. God is going to get me through this. And if he doesn't get me through this, he's still King of Kings and Lord of Lords. He's still reigning on his throne. He's still going to get me and take me to the place that he has promised me. So 1, real faith is countercultural. 2, real faith is uncompromising. Verses 17 and 18. When they say God is able, but even if he doesn't, he is still in control. When you watch the news, when the world has got us kind of just packed into our house and just 24/7 about this crisis, our faith is uncompromising. No matter what is going on, is your faith in the King or is your faith in yourself? Are you being an impala stuck in a cage and can only see inside of that cage? Or is your faith outside of that cage? Is your faith in something that is bigger than yourself? So our faith is counterculture. It goes against the world. Our faith is uncompromising. It doesn't matter what's going on. We still have faith in God. And number 3, the last one, real faith converts critics. When your world, when your friends, when your coworkers, when your friends on social media, when your Facebook friends, when they see how you react, are you converting critics? When everything happened, Nebuchadnezzar was always changed in his thoughts, right? Remember, start in chapter 1 with the food. I don't think that's true. But at the end, man, you guys are 10 times greater than anybody else. Nobody else could interpret his dreams in chapter 2. Oh, but you guys can. Man, your God is the real God. Chapter 3, don't bow down. Oh, my God can save me from this. And their God did. And now he's saying anybody can worship the King, their God. Now, as you read the rest of the book of Nebuchadnezzar, I would say that Nebuchadnezzar was never saved. He never came to acknowledge and trusting in who God was. He was lost. But you can see through his life on how, even though he was a lost person, he was starting to change. He was starting to ask questions. And hopefully that's what this crisis does for you. It allows people around you to answer and to ask you questions. Why do you spend an hour watching a church service online? How do you have faith? Why do you believe in a God that would do this? The whole point of this is to say that you will never have faith in the furnace if you do not believe that Jesus went through the worst furnace. Jesus Christ, God's Son, went through the ultimate death. He was picked on, he was hated, he was ridiculed, he was murdered, he was crucified, he was resurrected, he ascended into heaven. He went through the worst of the worst so that we would not have to. So that we could have a faith in something that is greater than ourselves. And God will get you through this crisis. God will get us through this crisis. But even if he doesn't, even if this crisis was to take our lives or take a life of a loved one, or maybe not this crisis, maybe another crisis 5 or 10 years from now, even if God doesn't get us through this crisis, he is still in control. He still loves you. He has still prepared a better place for you. He has still sent his Son to die to set an example so that he can take you to the place that is prepared for you. The question is today, are you an impala? Are you living by sight only? Or do you live by faith? A faith in a God that is bigger than you, that is bigger than me, and that is bigger than any of us. That our home is not of this world. Our home is something that is grand. Our faith is not of this world. Our faith that is something that is bigger. Guys, I hope we are not a bunch of Impala. Let me pray for us. Father, we thank you for this message. We thank you for these men that set this example of faith. Faith in the small things and faith in the large things. Father, we ask that you would improve our faith in who you truly are. That you would give us faith in small things so that we could have faith in the large things. Father, even though this is a scary time, even though things are going on that we can't explain, help us to be like your servants. Help us to say that we have faith in you and that you will save us. But even if you don't, we still know that you are King and that you are reigning on high and that you have prepared a place for us. Father, help us to be servants in this community. Help us to share the love of Christ. Help us to convert the critics by our faith of pointing everybody to you during this time. Father, we thank you for all that you've given us. And in your precious name, amen. Guys, God bless. Thank you so much for joining in. Don't forget, on Wednesday nights at 6 o'clock, I'm putting up Bible study, and we will keep you informed of all the things that are changing. Guys, we love you. We're looking to the day that we can come back together in one building and worship God together at one time, at one place. We love you, and we'll see you next time. God bless.